Well, we have Representative Ashley Hinson joining us today, currently in the race for Iowa's open U.S. Senate seat as the Republican candidate. Representative Hinson, thanks for being with us today. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. It's exciting to be running to represent Iowans.
I want to start by asking you, what made you want to make the jump and run for U.S. Senate?
Yes. Well, I am at the heart of everything, a working mom, and whether it is, refueling the minivan or restocking my fridge for our teenager boys, I know what is facing our families here in Iowa, and I see the high prices out there the same way they're hurting hardworking families across Iowa. I know that that is something that needs a lot of work, and we're not done. We've made some good progress in the last year in providing real relief for Iowans, but I'm running for the U.S. Senate to make sure that I keep on fighting for Iowa families to make life more affordable. Because again, I'm in that boat just like everybody else, and trying to make ends meet, put the fuel in the car, the food on the table, and make sure there's a little left over for you and your family.
And you are currently on the campaign trail while also being a representative. How is the campaign going? Tell me kind of where you guys are at with a few weeks until the primaries.
Yes, I've been making my way around the state, and I think one of the great things about the campaign is I have traveled to almost all 99 counties at this point. I'll be finishing that 99 county tour, the full Grassley, by the time we hit the primary. Telling the stories of Iowans in Washington, D.C. continues to be a priority for me, and I am serving and am blessed to serve in Northeast Iowa right now. And as I travel the state and hear directly from Iowans, I hear about what we were able to do with President Trump to deliver tax cuts for our working families, helping with the child tax credit, eliminating the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. So eliminating some of those burdens for our families. But again, there is more work to do as I travel the state and I hear about what's on people's minds. In the Senate, I know that to-do list involves continuing to bring down those costs for our families, healthcare premiums, prescription drug prices, groceries, energy, childcare. Those are all the areas that I continue to focus. And as I travel the state and continue to gather those stories, I know that I'll be able to be a good advocate for our entire state in the United States Senate.
And you talk a lot about the One Big Beautiful Bill on your campaign trail and in your campaign message. First, why is that something important for you to point out? And second, is there more that you would want to do if you are elected to U.S. Senate?
Yes, and I think about not only the direct relief to Iowans, but to our small businesses as I travel the state and meet with folks who are trying to make things and grow things and create opportunity and jobs here in our state. They want that certainty. So continuing to look for ways where we can do that. I mentioned healthcare because that is one place that is continuing to pinch our small business community. I think healthcare companies are ripping people off, and we need to do more to force transparency there. I've already done some work in this space helping to provide more transparency around our pharmacy benefit managers, which are continuing to drive up prescription drug costs. So we were able to pass some legislation earlier this year to force some more transparency around the rebate process, as it's called. We want to make sure that relief is passed on to the consumer at that point of sale at the local pharmacy. So again, there is more to do around healthcare. There's more to do around taxes to continue to return those dollars to Iowans, because at the end of the day, I understand it's Iowans' money, it's not the government's money, and we need to be very, very targeted in what we are spending and return everything else we can back to the taxpayer.
A lot of your Democratic challengers are pretty critical of the One Big Beautiful Bill, saying it's hiking up prices for some Iowans. What would your response be to those who are strongly opposed to the One Big Beautiful Bill?
Yeah. Well, these same people then want to make sure that these benefits that are designed to target families who actually need them they want those benefits to go to illegal immigrants or people who are gaming the system. I think it's the exact opposite. I think we need to be focused on doing right by the taxpayer and making sure that their resources are respected. So that's why, when we look at the reforms we actually put into place in the Big Beautiful Bill, in the working families tax cuts, not only did we provide that real relief to Iowans through those no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security. But we also put into place accountability measures. And again, the only people who had to be worried about losing their benefits are people who were gaming the system or who were illegally getting those benefits to begin with.
If you were to be heading over to the Senate side of things, is there something that you would want to accomplish and get done in the Senate that you maybe weren't able to in the House?
Yeah. Well, certainly I have a long list. It's hard to name just one thing, but what
Yeah.
I think is really critical is, again, I talk about our work to help support working families. And I've done a lot of work in the childcare space to support the workforce, behind the workforce, to drive down those costs for people who are, writing that check every single week, like I used to do it myself as well. But I look at family schedules, and I think that they can be such a challenge to providing good quality care. So I have a piece of legislation called the After Hours Child Care Act, which, not everybody has banker's hours in their jobs, and a lot of people work in shifts. So this is a piece of legislation that's specifically targeted to expanding that access point to childcare outside of normal work hours. So if I don't get it done yet in the House this Congress, I'm hopeful that I'll be able to continue that work in the United States Senate and continue to do more to help our working families here in Iowa.
I want to ask about the war in Iran. What would you say to Iowans who are maybe against it and really feeling the pinch at the gas pump? Farmers with fertilizer prices. What would you say to people who are critical of the war in Iran and how it's being handled? And what would you do in the Senate if you are elected going forward in addressing the war with Iran?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I hope it ends as quickly as possible and comes to resolution. We know that our brave men and women are serving overseas. Many Iowans have been serving overseas. And so I want to, first of all, say thank you to them and their families for supporting them and in the work that they're doing to keep us safe, because Iran is a long ways away. And it may seem like a world away for Iowans as well. But we have to have a safe and secure country. And Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. They shout, death to America regularly, and they are a danger to us. So I hope we're able to finish the job and make sure Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. They should not be allowed to have a nuclear weapon, but we do need to make sure we're wrapping this up so that we can provide that relief again at the gas pump. I understand it too, and Iowans shouldn't feel pinched every time they go to fill up their tank, and we need to do more there. It's also why, specifically on fertilizer, I've been working with the administration to find ways to increase domestic production. I've also sponsored legislation to remove the duties, the countervailing duties that have been added to some of the imports for fertilizer. So we have tried to take some steps to make sure we're providing that relief for our farmers and our producers and for everyday Americans filling up their gas tanks as well. One thing I would say too about the strategic reserve, which would be normally designed for situations exactly like this, President Biden unloaded this strategic reserve for political reasons near the end of his term to try to win an election, and to try to give that credibility to the Democrats. That caused incredible damage and depleted our supply. We are trying to rebuild that, but I think that the damage had already been done. And in the Working Families Tax Cut bill, we did include provisions to not only refill the strategic reserve, but repair the damage done to the caverns that typically hold that extra fuel. So that is why we are where we are right now. And I think it's important context in the bigger conversation.
And you recently just had Senate Majority Leader Thune in Iowa with you campaigning. What did that mean to have his support behind you and just have him in our home state?
Yeah. Well, it was certainly exciting to welcome the Majority Leader of the Senate here to Iowa. And I think it speaks to the importance of this race and the good work, again, that we have done to provide relief to American families, but also to reform and change the way government is working. We have a secure border because of President Trump and because of unified Republican control in Washington, D.C. We're peeling back the layers of the onion, cutting out the waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government, finally respecting taxpayers again. And so I was very pleased that Leader Thune could come to Iowa and help me tell that story about how critical holding this U.S. Senate seat here in Iowa is.
And as we wrap up this interview, going into the primaries and potentially even further to November, what sets you apart from your Democratic challengers?
Yeah. First and foremost, I have been around the state listening to Iowans and have a strong record of delivering, whether it's through my work on the Appropriations Committee, finding investments in healthcare, in public safety, in education. All the areas that I've heard directly from Iowans are priorities for them. I have a record of delivering that. I will always vote for the most conservative bill that I can get across the finish line, because I think that's about respecting taxpayers. But my governing philosophy doesn't change based on who's in the White White House or who has a gavel. And so I will always work with anyone who will work with me to get Iowans' priorities across the finish line. And so I think that is what sets me apart from the pack, both in the primary and in the general election. And I'm confident that I will be able to continue to deliver in that way as the next United States Senator from Iowa.
All right. Well, Congresswoman Hinson, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me.